It's Saturday morning, I'm Steve, and this is your Saturday morning TV revival for the generation who survived dial-up, traded Pokémon cards in the playground like they were black market diamonds, lived through the great MSN signing wars, knew the pain of blowing on a PS1 disc and N64 cartridge to make them work, and can still sing every word of the Power Rangers, Pokémon and Digimon theme tunes without hesitation or shame. On today's show, we've got a stacked lineup. We're heading back into Bit by Bit, breaking down the next rule in the Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook. We've got Hit and Miss, looking at the best and worst comics of my week. In Book Club, we're diving into the next part of the Arlong Park arc in One Piece and debating why I apparently can't pronounce the word manga, like a normal person. We've got the most unhinged Pokemon pack battle on the internet with Lick That Pokemon, and we're back under the spotlight, taking a proper look at one of the greatest games of all time, Carmageddon. But before all of that, we're kicking things off with Hobby Hangout, celebrating our wins and achievements from the past week. And without further ado, let's head over to the hobby bench for that Hobby Hangout. Welcome to Hobby Hangout. This is the part of the show where we celebrate our wins and achievements from last week. Whatever your hobby is, whether it's painting minis, knitting, baking, reading manga, building Lego cities, homebrew D&D worlds, or collecting rare houseplants, this is the space. Every hobby counts, and we are here to cheer you on. So first up, tell me what your hobby goals were for last week, and did you achieve them? Drop them in the comment and let us know how you got on. And look, your hobbies can be as out there as you like. Maybe last week you tried to teach your sourdough starter manners because it's been bubbling like it thinks it's starring in a horror film. Maybe you ran a yoga session with your houseplants to help them stretch their leaves and stay flexible. Maybe you organized your spices by emotional intensity instead of flavor because nutmeg feels chaotic and needed to be dealt with. Whatever it was, did you do it? Let me know in the comments. My goal last week was nice and simple. I made myself a new texture palette for painting my Warhammer models. A texture palette is basically a little board you can dry brush on to check exactly how much paint is on the brush. Mine had completely flattened out over time. So I took a piece of wood, glued on some little toy soldiers, some sprue bits, then added 3 different textures around the edge. One section with sand, one with little rocks at the top that will look nice on the model, and then a section with some chalk for a bigger rocky texture. I've not undercoated it yet because I wanted you to see all the textures clearly, but I'll spray it black like I do my models so it gives an accurate read when I test paint out on it. It took about an hour and a half in front of the telly and was exactly what I needed. After a few weeks of going really hard on my Age of Painttober piece for the Travelling Man competition, I needed something chill and low pressure to reset and relax. And here is your well-being reminder. Hobbies should feel good. They should help you switch off and recharge, not drain you. So set goals that match your week. If life is busy, do something small. And if you don't hit a goal, that's completely fine. Life happens. But if you keep missing your goals, maybe think about whether you are setting them too big or whether you need to claim back some time to look after yourself and enjoy your hobby again. So tell me in the comments, what was your hobby goal last week and whether you achieved it? No matter what your hobby goal is, we are here to celebrate it. Let us share those wins together. And while we're talking about hobby progress from last week, let's head over to the winner's circle and celebrate your amazing hobby goals and shout out before we plan for next week. All right, let's jump into this week's winner's circle. I want to give a huge shout out to the Graphic Decanter for sharing their hobby goal with us. Last week, their goal was to not stress about falling behind on comments and also to reflect on how much they'd pay for a comic on eBay. I can totally relate to both of those. Sometimes responding to comments can feel overwhelming, but it's one of the best parts of being a content creator. And as for eBay, well, we all know how quickly those costs can add up, right? I'd love to hear more about which comics you are eyeing, and I definitely get that even small purchases add up fast. So if you've got your own hobby goals or wins, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to celebrate your successes and give you a shout out in a future winner's circle. Right, let's swing back over to the hobby bench and set our goals for the coming week. And now it's time to set our hobby goals for next week. This is the part of the show where we look ahead and plan out our creative adventures for the coming week. Whatever your hobby, it's all about making fun, achievable goals. Before I share mine, I want to hear yours. Let me know what you're planning in the comments so we can all cheer each other on. And remember, your goals can be as whimsical and as fun as you'd like. Maybe this week you're planning to organise your sock drawer by colour and personality, or perhaps you're aiming to create a snack ranking system based on emotional support value. Maybe you're vowed to master the ancient art of competitive speed napping and become the champion of the sofa. If that is your hobby journey this week, I respect it deeply. Now let me know in the comments. Now, let me share my goal for the week. I'm planning on building the final models I need for an upcoming Warhammer tournament. I've got 3 Eradicators and a Blade Guard Ancient to assemble. I'll get comfy in front of the TV, grab my lap tray and glue them together. It's a nice, relaxing task, and it means my Space Marine army will be complete at 2,000 points. And trust me, after painting silver armor non-stop, I am definitely ready for a recharge. And of course, a little reminder, keep your goals manageable and realistic. Hobbies are meant to be fun and relaxing, so don't overwhelm yourself. It's all about enjoying the journey and celebrating the small wins. So what's your hobby goal for next week? Drop it in the comments and let's keep each other motivated and inspired. Now that we've locked in our hobby goals for next week, let's dive into bit by bit and explore the ins and outs of D&D object interaction. Welcome to Bit by Bit, the part of the show where we take something and break it down into simple, friendly chunks, bit by bit, every week. Right now, we are working through the Player's Handbook to make D&D feel less daunting and more exciting for new players. If you're following along at home, we are on page 20, and this week we are looking at interacting with objects. So what does that mean? Well, basically D&D is full of stuff that you can poke, pull, pick up and break. Doors, levers, books, swords, secret buttons, mysterious glowing orbs that you probably should not touch, but absolutely will anyway. When you want your character to do something with one of these objects, you tell the Dungeon Master and they tell you what happens. So first, what counts as an object? An object is something that is not alive and is one solid thing. So a chair is an object. A window is an object. A sword is an object. A building is not an object because it is made up of lots of smaller objects. Same with a wagon. Think of objects as single items your character can actually interact with directly. Next, timing. If you are just hanging out, exploring, interacting with things is simple. You say what you do and the DM tells you the result. But in combat, time gets tight. You get one free object interaction on your turn. That might be opening a door or drawing your sword. If you want to do more than one thing with an object in that same turn, like open a door and grab a torch and then pull a lever, you will need to spend your action to do those extra things. Now, what about secret stuff? If you are searching for hidden things like secret doors or traps, you tell the DM how you are searching and where. If your character is actually looking near the hidden object, the DM might ask you to roll a wisdom perception check. If you roll well, you find it. If you are searching in the completely wrong direction, you will not find anything, no matter how good the roll is, because your character is basically checking the wrong cupboard. Carrying things next. Most of the time you can carry your normal adventuring gear without worrying about weight. But if you try and drag a huge statue out of a temple or fill your backpack with 1,000 copper coins because treasure is treasure, the DM might question if your character can actually handle it. And finally, breaking objects. Fragile things can just be destroyed if you really want to. Tear paper, smash glass, snap brittle stuff, but tougher things like metal doors or magical locks might need rolls, tools, or special rules to break through. Your DM will guide you when that happens. And that's it for Bit by Bit this week. We'll be looking at another section of the Player's Handbook next week. If you have any D&D rules that you want me to cover in a future Bit by Bit, let me know in the comments and I will make sure to include them. With D&D unpacked for another week, let's shift gears into hit and miss and dive into the best and worst comics of the week. Welcome to Hit and Miss, the part of the show where I look at 2 comics that I have read this week, share my thoughts, and you have to guess which one was my hit and which one was my miss. These are both franchises I absolutely adore, so genuinely stung to choose. So let's dive in. Stranger Things, Tales from Hawkins 2, issue 4, does something visually really exciting. The artwork is vibrant, the colours are bold, and there's a slight surreal neon-infused palette that gives the whole thing an almost dreamlike tone. It really pops off the page. It's got this sense that you're watching familiar events from a heightened emotional lens, which really works for the aesthetic. Stylistically, this comic relies heavily on narration from an external source, a nature documentary running over the top. Most of the story unfolds without the characters really speaking, and instead you're being led by someone describing predator behaviour and hunting instinct. It's a bold move that some will love and some will hate. There is a sense that we've seen some of this before in the show and in comics. It doesn't massively expand on the universe or give new emotional ground. And while right now it's technically canon, I've got a strong feeling future storylines are gonna override parts of it. Right, next, Quick Stops, Volume 3, Issue 2. It has that clean, black and white, classic presentation, and that Kevin Smith self-aware tone. Smith actually places himself directly into the narrative and immediately pokes fun at his own legacy and the fact that he can't resist referencing his films constantly. There's a tongue-in-cheek quality to it, but it's a heartfelt tribute to an actor who, from his films, who sadly passed away. This one plays on nostalgia and insider knowledge for sure, and probably has no place in front of someone who isn't a Kevin Smith fan. It's also a window into a sequel we will never actually get to see, so it becomes a bit of a self-love letter to a world and cast from the past. So, based on those reviews, which one do you think was my hit and which one was my miss? Drop your guesses in the comments. All right, time to reveal. My miss of the week was Stranger Things, Tales from Hawkins 2, Issue 4. Gorgeous visuals, atmosphere on point, but ultimately nothing new, and the documentary-style narration really didn't do it for me. It's fine, but fine isn't enough in a universe this strong. And my hit was Quick Stops, Volume 3, Issue 2. Black and white, pure Kevin Smith energy, heartfelt nostalgia, and a glimpse into a sequel that will never be. If you're a fan of the Viewersk universe, this is absolutely worth your time. Anthology books are notoriously tricky, and this one manages to make it feel personal. So do you agree with me this week, or am I completely wrong? Have you read either of these? Let me know what your hit was and what your comic that missed the mark was. And don't forget to drop your guesses every week. I love seeing what you all think before the grand reveal. Now that we've covered the highs and lows of this week's comics, let's head over to Follower's Choice and get your top recommendations to welcome new readers into the comic world. Welcome back to another edition of Follower's Choice. We all know how overwhelming it can be stepping into a comic shop or bookstore, staring at that massive wall of comics and mangas, not knowing where to start. I've been there myself, and it can definitely feel daunting for something that should be fun and exciting. So that's why I'm turning to you all for some help. I'm looking for your top comic book and manga recommendations, especially those with great entry points for newcomers. Whether it's a beloved series that's easy to jump into, or something new and upcoming that you think is going to be amazing, I want to hear about it. Drop your recommendations in the comments below. Let's help each other discover some awesome new reads and make it easier for everybody to get started on their reading journey. And as we wrap up the comic recommendations, we're turning the page into book club, diving into our favourite fiction from the past week. Welcome to our book club. This is where we dive into some of our favourite pieces of fiction. And before we jump into today's review, I want to give a huge thanks to everybody who shared their recommendations last week. A big shout out to Jockster85 for suggesting The Wandering Inn by Pratiba, I think that is the name. Heretical Fishing by Haylock Jobson, and All the Skills by Honor Ray. I've added them to my wish list, even though my bookshelf is already bursting at its seams. And a special thanks to Matthew Nail 714 for recommending Kraken by China Mieville. You all picked some really bizarre names. It sounds like an incredible blend of comedy and horror set in London, and I'm definitely going to check it out. Now, let's dive into this week's review. We're focusing on the middle part of the Arlong Park arc in One Piece, covering chapters 77 to 85. This arc is undoubtedly rich with emotional depth, especially through Nami's backstory, which reveals her driving trauma and motivations. However, the extended length of Nami's flashback does run the risk of pacing fatigue, especially when you read it chapter by chapter. It might have been more engaging if these flashbacks were interspersed with the present day events to maintain some momentum. On the character front, Belle Marie's portrayal is particularly interesting. In the manga, she comes across as more morally ambiguous, harsh, rough-edged, and even physically disciplining the children. In contrast, the live adaptation softens her character, making her warmer and more protective. While this change aligns with modern cultural expectations, it does shift the tone and complexity that was her character. Nami's journey from anti-villain to a hero is compelling and adds layers to her character. She acts selfishly but with noble aim, and this complexity makes her arc more nuanced. This arc is undoubtedly one of the darkest in the series so far, and the brutality of Belle Marie's death is depicted without restraint, adding to the emotional intensity as we move towards the arc's conclusion. And the return of Luffy brings a joyful shift in tone, balancing the darkness with his characteristic whimsy. This contrast is essential in maintaining the series' balance between light and dark elements. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Did you find the pacing of Nami's flashback effective, or did it feel too drawn out for you? Do you agree with the character changes between the manga and the live action adaptation? Let's discuss it in the comments. And of course, if you have any other thoughts on One Piece or recommendations for other series, I'm all ears. So now that we've explored our book club picks, let's jump into the quickie and settle a debate on how to pronounce manga once and for all. I want to have a quickie with you all, and this week I'm diving into something that's been on my mind, the pronunciation of the word manga. So I've always said manga with a soft A, but recently I've noticed some people say manga. And now I'm curious, is there a right way, or is it just a matter of preference? I definitely don't want to sound like a newbie or a wannabe any more than I already do. So let me know how you pronounce manga and why. Is it about the translation from Japanese or maybe just personal preference? I'd love to hear your answers. And that's it for today's quickie. With our manga pronunciation hopefully cleared up soon, let's dive into Lick That Pokemon and get ready for a slithery Pokemon pack battle. Welcome to Lick That Pokemon, the most unhinged, unsanitary, and spiritually questionable Pokemon trading card game show on the internet. This is a Pokemon pack battle, but we do things a little bit differently here. We're not crowning a winner based on rarity or value, art style, or how many people pretend they always liked that Pokemon before it got cool. No, the winner is decided entirely by one sacred metric. Which pack contains the Pokemon I would most like to rub my tongue all over? Yeah, we're doing that. Today's slobbery showdown is Scarlet and Violet's Journey Together versus Sword and Shield's Silver Tempest. 2 packs enter, 1 pack leaves, covered in glory and imaginary saliva. Right then, let's open the packs. Let's start with Journey Together. It's one of the newer sets in the Pokemon trading card series. We don't need them. Right, what have we got? A Paras. Oh, a Milcery. Oh, starting strong Journey Together with that. Electro, not going any near it. Salaman CX. Coolish card, but strong contender there from Journey Together. Right, Silver Tempest. Now, I've not opened Silver Tempest for ages. I can't quite remember what the pack trick is. I think I've been that. And move 4 cards to the front, and that's an energy. Hey, your boy still got it. Right, what have we got? 2 energies in a row. Serena, Lopunny, whatever it's called, Murkrow, Swablu. You're not really appealing to me here. Rotom, Buneri, Dreepy. Ooh, hang on. Cool card. Gardevoir. Not lickable, but it's very pretty. And then a Keldeo. I swear to God, sometimes there's Pokemon that I'm just like, I didn't know that existed. Like, at what point did this come into the game? Who knows? Anyway, let's lick that Pokemon. The fact that this card is very cool makes no difference whatsoever. I honestly think we have a clear winner. Normally I would debate what the winner is going to be, but in all honesty, Silver Tempest, you've got nothing. Journey Together, you almost had nothing, but you gave me this Milcery. Bit liquidy, might be by licking a yogurt, maybe. I don't know how solid its form really is, but it's going to taste good. Possibly like sucking on a mini milk. If you got one of its little globules in its mouth, then yeah, freeze it, total mini milk texture. So, Journey Together, you are crowned today's winner for this Milcery. And there we have it. 2 noble packs, 2 glorious collections of Pokemon, some lickable, some deeply unlickable. Do you think I crowned the right Pokemon the winner? Would you have picked differently? Which one would you pick to lick? Which Pokemon do you think is the most lickable, and which one would you absolutely never put your tongue near under any circumstances? Tell me in the comments. I need to know how cursed your brains are as well. And that's it for Lick That Pokemon this week. We'll be back next week for more tongue-based Pokemon fun. And if you found this weird, gross, or mildly distressing, then, well, that sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. This is how we do it on Lick That Pokemon. And after the excitement of our Pokemon pack battle, let's jump into just one line and see if you can guess the book from its very first line. Welcome back to Just One Line. This is the game show where I read the very first line of a book and you've got to guess which book it is in the comments. How well do you know your books from just one line? But before we get into this week's challenge, let's quickly recap last week's book. The first line was from The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. Huge congratulations to everybody who guessed that one correctly. I've heard that some of the first lines have been a little bit too easy, so this week I'm bringing you something a bit more niche and hopefully more challenging. Here comes the first line. Gnomes are small. On the whole, small creatures don't live for a long time, but perhaps they do live fast. So what do you think? Drop your guesses in the comments below and let's see who can get it right this time. So now that we've had our fun with just one line, let's shift our focus to the spotlight and dive into the world of Carmageddon, one of my all-time favourite games. Welcome to the spotlight. Today we are diving into one of my all-time favourite game franchises, Carmageddon. Carmageddon first launched in 1997 and it quickly became notorious for its unique blend of vehicular mayhem and dark humour. The game sets players loose in open world environments, letting them cause chaos and destruction, and it definitely pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in gaming at the time. The franchise expanded with several sequels, including Carmageddon Splat Pack, Carmageddon 2, Carpocalypse Now, each building on the original's formula and adding new features. These sequels introduced more vehicles, more varied environments, and even crazier power-ups, apologies. However, the franchise wasn't without its controversies. It faced bans and censorship in several countries due to its violent content. For instance, in some regions, the game was modified to replace pedestrians with zombies or to tone down the gore. The original PC version is often celebrated for its innovative gameplay, but the N64 port was heavily criticised for its poor performance and technical issues, often ranking it amongst the worst N64 games. In more recent years, Carmageddon made a triumphant return with a reboot, bringing updated graphics and modernised gameplay to both old fans and new players. It's been exciting to see how the franchise has evolved and adapted over time. So, that's our spotlight on Carmageddon. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you love it, hate it, or have fond memories of it? Let me know in the comments. And that's it for today's spotlight. We'll be back next week with another deep dive into something just as fascinating. And now it seems the end of the show is on the horizon. So let's get ready to say ta-ra. And that's it for today's show. I've loved hanging out with you and I hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me. If you know anybody who needs a dose of Saturday morning nostalgia, be sure to share the video and spread the love, because we all know that Saturday mornings were the best time of the week growing up. I want to hear your thoughts on Lick That Pokemon, and don't forget to let me know what you think about Carmageddon as well. And of course, drop your hobby goals and wins in the comments. Let's keep that conversation going. We'll be back next week with more of your favourites, including Bit by Bit, Hobby Hangout, and of course, the disgustingly amazing Lick That Pokemon. Remember, a new episode drops every Saturday at 9:30 a.m. on YouTube, and we'll be sharing the highlights all week long on Instagram and TikTok. So make sure you follow us and never miss a moment. Until next week, I've been Steve, and it's Saturday morning, baby.